Hello everyone, I'm John Higgins and a warm welcome to my YouTube channel, John Higgins Film Review. Subscribe and like the channel so I can build content like this. And it's a delight to welcome one and all to this interview special with Ronan Kerrigan, who is an Irish filmmaker who's made a couple of interesting short films, Idle Hands and To Have No Scruples, which are very dark in content. We're going to be talking about these, but also we'll be talking a little bit about his creativity and his creative process, and of course his journey. So Ronan, a good warm welcome to you.
How's it going? Hello.
Great. So I want to start off with your initial spark and where you began. What was the spark that got you into filmmaking?
Um, as far back as it goes, I don't know. I think when I was very, very young, we had a very wide selection of videotapes and movies on video, and I think the and you know, just sort of like trying to emulate what was going on with those in like drawing and playing with toys and stuff. It's always sort of something that's been with me, is trying to tell stories and then enjoying telling stories with friends. I love telling jokes. My dad's always me and him are always telling each other jokes, so we're always sort of like telling stories to each other, and so it kind of seemed like a natural sort of avenue for me growing up, particularly when I was a kid. Like films like American Werewolf in London, like really scared me as a child. I was scared of the video box, and I love stuff like that, videos and movies that are just like that are very impactful like that, I suppose. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to sort of pinpoint.
And
Uh,
when you were growing up, I mean, how important was the cinema experience over the video experience? I mean, I'm of the VHS age anyway. I mean, like you, I mean, I saw a lot of things. Like, I mean, the first two VHSs I saw in at home, thanks to my parents, were the Hills of Ice and Scanners. So I'm just curious to know, did you? Because what was interesting was I would go and see a movie at the cinema, and then my parents would come on with something like Southern Comfort, the Walter Hill film. So I'm just curious to know, how did you balance, watching films in the cinemas with watching films on VHS with your friends?
um, it's hard to really say. I suppose for me growing up, like the cinema has been kind of my key social experience for my like entire life. You know, for my I have a sort of very closely connected family. Me and my cousins are basically brothers and sisters, so we'd pretty much go to the cinema every week, and I haven't really sort of dropped that quota ever since. I still go to the cinema nearly every week, but probably 2 or 3 times a week, and I try to see absolutely everything, and I try to keep up to date on everything that comes out. And in contrast to like how I have grown up with like home media and DVDs and videotapes and Blu-rays and stuff, it's been another massive part of my life. I've been collecting movies and videotapes and trying to find like unique copies of things for years. But it's also, yeah, it's just pretty much like a hobby, but it's also very, very educational. I love the thing that I like the most about home media compared to the cinema would probably be like the special features and stuff like that. I feel like that's been integral to my learning experience for getting into movies and such.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the when you started making movies. I mean, you mentioned earlier that it was such an integral part of your thing. So what were your early kind of attempts at filmmaking like?
Well, kind of silly, I'd say. I my first sort of like film where I had kind of like a reasonable amount of success with it was a film I made called Holy Man, and it won the Audience Choice Award at Film Devour, which was like the first time I ever was in a competition or anything, and it was just a really humiliating comedy film where I played a student in the Holy Land, which is like the student area of Belfast, and he had to like he decided to become a gigolo or a sex worker to sort of pay his rent, and decided to film it in a sort of Borat kind of on the street kind of style, where I had to play the character and offer my services to people and whatever, and it was just humiliating. And I'm not really very, very good at improvised comedy or anything, so it was just very humiliating. Thankfully, other people thought it was funny, and a lot of the editing and the directing that I directed it and edited and acted in the film, but it was just all those things sort of helped pick up the performance, which was quite weak. But yeah, that was like my first sort of foray into actually getting a film shown and seen, and working on it like that. And yeah, and then came into university and did To Have No Scruples and some other projects.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, let's talk about your university life. I mean, what did you go and study, and what was and when you were sort of developing, I mean, what was the community like? I mean, what university did you go to, and what was your initial intention? Did you have a major in a particular subject that wasn't film related, or was film always the focus?
Yeah, I went to Belfast Met initially, which was a sort of technical college for film and TV production, which was more of sort of like the basic stuff, and that's when I made Holy Man. And then in university, I went to Ulster University in Derry, the McGee campus, and my dissertation topic in my final year was related to violence and authentic portrayals of violence in film and media, and that sort of revolved around like the topic of um, showing correctly portraying victims of violence, and the enacting of violence from perpetrators or predators. And that was a kind of a really complicated topic to get into. I feel like in cinema and in media in general, I think people kind of take for granted how much violence is in media and how it's portrayed, and we sort of just consume it really in a blasé fashion, where I think there's lots of different filmmakers and theorists out there that have a bit more of a concerned or conservative sort of approach to it. So there's lots of things to talk about. And when it came to the environment that I was in for making movies around that topic, and for discussing that topic, my peers were fantastic. I had a fantastic experience talking to everybody in that year. It was a great year in university. I really enjoyed myself and felt like I developed a lot as an artist and a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit following on from that. I mean, violence in films is, I mean, it's always seems to be part of it. I mean, there was a point probably around the 90s, I think, probably firstly Tarantino, and then of course John Woo. I mean, we look, I mean, the funny thing is I remember the reaction that films like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction had. I mean, when Marvin gets shot, spoiler alert, in Pulp Fiction, what I loved about that scene was the logistics. But then, of course, you then look at the incredible intense shootouts and relentless violence of Hard Boiled, which for me was his last film before, well, it was one of his last in Hong Kong before he went to Hollywood. When you look at the presentation of violence, I mean, in your films, for example, it's quite subtle in its way, and you certainly will be getting onto Idle Hands and Have No Scruples in a minute anyway. But do you feel that, do you prefer the kind of, when you react to violence like blood and guts and stuff in horror films, for example, like American Werewolf, we can quote that wonderful moment when the Nazi monsters knock on the door and shoot everybody. It's kind of such a weird one because it's a double nightmare. Spoiler. And I'm just curious to know whether or not you, when you're thinking about that, because obviously you'll be looking at feature films soon anyway, and you want to look at that. What's your overall take on violence per se? Are you repulsed by it? Is it something that intrigues you?
It's excuse me. Sorry, it is definitely something that intrigues me. I think that you brought up a fantastic example, and he seems to be kind of the poster boy example for the topic of violence in cinema. Quentin Tarantino is someone who definitely has a very sort of liberal approach to violence, and he's sort of very explicit in his portrayal of violence. But I feel like in terms of the wider discussion in sort of an international cinema sort of approach. I feel like other directors kind of have a polar opposite reaction to Quentin Tarantino. Like some people like Michael Haneke and a variety of other filmmakers have very different approaches and different perspectives on that topic. And I feel like a more balanced approach, and particularly when you're sort of considering the topic that you are approaching as a filmmaker, like for something like To Have No Scruples, I kind of wanted to talk about sort of generational trauma and religion and stuff like that. And those are kind of serious topics. And I try not to sort of, I feel like if I approach the violence in the film like the Three Stooges, it would be incredibly, maybe inappropriate or not really uh interesting. I feel like it would sort of undermine the points that you're trying to make. So I guess it kind of comes into just what you're considering when you're making the film, and yeah, a variety of different things. It's very complicated, and some directors that I find have very interesting approaches to violence. They're definitely Michael Haneke and Gaspar Noé. Gaspar Noé is a director that a lot of people think of when they think of uh, disgusting or exploitative violence, but he actually has a very interesting approach to portraying violence when in that his camera always seems sort of in line or in sympathy with the victim of the violence. So you're as a viewer, you're always sort of engaging in the violence in his films in a very sort of sympathetic, or you feel like you're almost sort of projecting yourself onto the character that is being attacked. And it's very, I find his works are very interesting as well.
Mm,
But yeah, there's lots of different things to
yeah.
talk about with violence. Is a very
Yeah.
broad and upsetting
It's
topic.
I mean, funnily enough, bringing up Gaspano, certainly Irreversible, which kind of through sort of destructures everything. It's first of all, it's a very disturbing movie, but it's also an important movie to say about the issue of violence. I mean, Monica Bellucci, certainly, who is center stage in
Yes.
one particular sequence. Please be warned if you haven't seen it out there. So let's talk a little. We got to get on to the two short films you got. So Idle Hands and To Have No Script. So just to a brief introduction to the audience. Idle Hands is basically about breakdown of relationships against the backdrop of watching from their hands, and then To Have No Scruples is dealing with a troubled woman who is undergoing some weird kind of traumatizing thing. I mean, that's without giving away any spoilers. So tell us about the start off point. What was your start off point for each one? If you can just sort of itemize Idle Hands and Have No Scruples and just do a brief overview of what you did on each.
Yeah. Well, for To Have No Scruples, that film was sort of a rush kind of situation where I had a film made up to be made. I had a script finished, and my lecturers were egging me on to get this film made, and then it turned out to be an impossibility to cast. It was very difficult considering my topic was violence and stuff, and so my film was very violent, and it was all about how I was going to try and portray the violence. So my lecturer sort of basically just said, start over, because you can't cast, like, it was very difficult to cast this film. So I started over, and I came up with To Have No Scruples in basically like a week. And then after I got the okay for that project, I just refined the script. And originally it was kind of like an attack on, I wanted it to be sort of a criticism on stuff like organized religion and Catholicism in particular and stuff like that. But as I worked through the story within the storyboards and talked to the actor and everything, it sort of slowly turned into more of just a question about mental health and faith, and where do those two sort of subjects cross in society, and in particular in the Northern Irish context. And I just wanted to sort of have the story sort of explores that and asks questions about that basically. And with Idle Hands was excuse me, there's an airplane go by. With Idle Hands, that film came about after a summer of writing scripts. I wrote about 4 or 5 scripts, and then just went looking for different funding bodies, the story, and eventually got Northern Ireland Screen to got funding from them, and got a crew together, and got the fantastic Keith O'Grady to help me out, and a variety of other fantastic crew members. But that story is basically a microcosm of lots of different stories that I have noticed around me in my life, basically. And I live in a small village in Northern Ireland called Sion Mills. It's not too far from Londonderry or Derry. And basically, I just composited all those stories into this small film, and made it about how I kind of wanted to explore how our economic system is in such a shape that it tears people apart, especially those who are in poverty. I thought that if you read books such as Mark Fisher's Capitalist Realism and stuff like that, I kind of wanted to have a more emotional impact on the sort of topics that he sort of talks about in those books.
Okay, so it's I mean, you mentioned also, I mean, how long does it take you to get a crew together? I mean, when you've kind of got the go ahead on your funding, I mean, how much planning do you do? And where do you find your crew? I mean, how do you get them together?
Well, for each project, there's kind of two complicated stories there. So, for To Have No Scruples, I had just a small group of people. I got Maeve Connolly as an actress. She's a beautiful human being, a beautiful person, and she was very open with me about her experiences with people who have similar afflictions to the character that she was playing, and who she knew in her life that were like that. And she was just a fantastic person, and I really enjoyed working with her. And then it was just basically me and my girlfriend who played the daughter in the film, and she was a fantastic actor as well. Amazing crying at the end. I was very impressed, and it was just I had a cinematographer to work on the project, but then they backed out at the last minute, and so I ended up having to take on cinematography myself. And I had Leon Wright on sound, and he was just a student who was available to help with the sound. So it was a very, very small crew, and we just worked in this house for 3 days and just got the project finished. But with Idle Hands, it was kind of a more complicated process. I had Pierce Cullen on producing for a while, and then he just became sort of a little bit more unavailable, and I was sort of kind of new to producing with funding, and talking to producers when there was funding involved. And I decided to sort of take the project onto myself, and produce the entire thing myself, with Keith O'Grady, who was my cinematographer, and he worked as an executive producer as well, and just sort of helped out getting crew together. And I ended up sort of just asking around and just seeing who was available, seeing who I knew from school, from university and such, and seeing and emailing just different people, and got the crew together eventually. But the hardest part of the crew, I would say, was either casting or the visual effects. There was a sequence in the car that was incredibly hard because we ended up having to use a virtual production down in Belfast, which was just really complicated. I've never used that before. It's having to drag a car into a big room and turn on all these different screens and record all these different angles from the road. It was just really complicated. But yeah, there's getting a crew together was just about asking who's available, basically.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Irish film industry. I mean, you're from you're based in Galway and stuff, and I mean, I'm just curious to know, where do you feel the industry is at the moment? Because we get people like Neil Jordan, for example, and Jim Sheridan, for example, who broke through with the likes of films like The Crying Game and Angel, and Jim Sheridan, of course, with My Left Foot, and of course, In the Name of the Father, which it's actually 30 years old this year. And I'm just curious to know, when you reflect on this community that you're part of, I mean, do you feel that it's in good health? Do you feel that there could be more done to sort of highlight the plight filmmakers to get your films out there? So, I mean, the indie circuit's often, as I know, is always a challenge for whatever filmmaker it is. But what's your take on the Irish industry at the moment?
I feel like Although like currently I am located in Galway, it's just a little. This is my last week in Galway. I'm just here visiting for a while, and then I'll be back down the north. I'm normally in Sion Mills, which is just in between Derry and Belfast. So I feel like it's a little bit insular depending on where you are. I feel like because a lot of the crew and a lot of budgets and stuff around here are kind of small most of the time. In terms of the independent short film scene, you're either getting funding from Northern Ireland Screen or independent funding from a different sort of body. It sort of seems kind of smaller and insular. So either you're filming in Belfast or filming in Derry, and not many people are going to want to like travel in between. But outside of that sort of small community on either end of that road, sort of it's kind of booming at the minute, as far as I'm aware, in terms of like bigger productions. A lot of productions from the US and abroad are coming over here because we've got great locations and lots of room for locations and such. And yeah, it's doing pretty well as far as I'm aware, and a lot of productions are going well down in the Republic as well, or up here in the Republic, I should say, where I am now. A lot of great productions, especially in the likes of Dublin and Kerry and Cork. Lots of great work going on up and down there. And yeah, there's lots of really great work, and especially in Belfast, the community in there is just fantastic. Lots of amazing actors and cinematographers and upcoming directors. Like you were talking to Mervyn Marshall last week, I believe, and he's a fantastic director and friend of mine, and he's been great support for other directors, and we're all very supportive of each other. And even in Derry, there's fantastic actors and directors. And Keith O'Grady, my cinematographer, is an amazing actor or director, and he works as an actor, and he's mostly a cinematographer by trade. But he I guess that the community is small enough that most people are kind of a jack of all trades. Yeah, I think it's booming, and it's getting better, and it's going to probably get a lot bigger very soon in the next couple of years.
Okay, so let's talk about your future now, because you're obviously you've done some short films, and that's kind of proved your chops in the industry. Are you looking to, if you wanted to, expand your stories? I don't know if Idle Hands or To Have No Scruples will be features. I mean, they look like they're perfectly contained as short films. What sort of features would you be looking at, and where would you like to go and make films?
I feel like as a filmmaker, or in terms of my own filmmaking, I like to be in well, I like to work with stories that are close to my understanding of the world, and where I understand the world the best right now is Northern Ireland. I've never really lived anywhere else for long enough to know that well, and I kind of want to make films that reflect Northern Ireland, or that are about Northern Ireland, that could reflect topics that are larger than Northern Ireland. Or and a lot of the films, a lot of like the feature projects that I've been sort of working on recently in terms of script writing have been about a variety of things. Lots of sort of media related sort of commentary on media, and commentary on education. I kind of wanted to make a feature film about teaching in primary schools, and I wanted to make a film about. I've got another script about a producer, a reality television producer, and a variety of different things. But as you can maybe infer from my short film styles, or the style of my short films, I try to approach a lot of these topics with a sense of austerity and seriousness, and I try to maybe throw in a couple of shocks in there every now and then. It's a little bit. I try to be a little bit more upsetting in generally, intentionally or unintentionally. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm aiming for. But at the moment, I've kind of got a couple of more sort of short film projects that I would like to get finished or get off the ground, or see where they can end up. But yeah, one's about a family and a house burning down, and the other one is about a hotel room and a camera and behind the mirror and stuff. I've got another couple of projects on the go, so I'm looking to see where the rest of my short films go before I start pursuing anything feature related.
Okay, so we're going to wrap up shortly. I'm just checking your background. You were kind enough to send me some information. I understand that Holy Man, which you mentioned earlier, is on your YouTube channel. Let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about your social media. I mean, where can people watch your films, and what are your social media handles?
Well, predominantly I like to upload most of my films on YouTube under just my name, Ronan Kerrigan, Kerrigan, and you can find me on Instagram by the same name again, just with a little underscore in between my first and forename, and that's mostly it. I mean, you can probably find me on Letterboxd or anywhere else. You know, I don't tend to have too many aliases. I just go by my name wherever I am on the internet. So just search me up wherever you can type, I suppose.
Okay. Well, listen, I've got two final questions. First of all, is how has the film festival circuit helped your film and career, and what's the festival experience like?
The festival experience has been absolutely amazing. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love traveling and getting to film festivals and talking to other filmmakers and getting to know different people in the industry. It's so much fun, and also getting to sit in the audience while my films are being shown. I I'm aware that you've probably seen to Have No Scruples, and you know the ending, and the reaction that film gets normally is very interesting. Either when it's either negative or positive, it's always interesting to hear the audience's reaction. And the film as well. To Have No Scruples has a segment where the character is having sort of a mental episode, and during that portion, I kind of stole a trick from Gaspar Noé in Irreversible, that he put in this very low frequency sound that apparently just makes you feel very uncomfortable if you listen to it for too long, especially on loudspeakers. And I have had distinct memories of going to the cinema to see To Have No Scruples and coming out with a headache,
Mm.
and not really enjoying the experience myself, but some other people have enjoyed it, and it's always good to hear responses like that.
Okay, well, my final question is a general one: is what are you most proud of about your career to date?
Um, uh, Hard to say. I guess I'm just right now at the minute. I'm just really proud that I've been able to make as many films as I've been able to make, and that I've had so many great experiences in making new communications and or new relationships with other people. You know, I love making new friends. Like you know, I just love making new friends and love talking to new people and being able to sort of explore different topics and ideas with different people and learn more about everyone. And I don't know, I just love what I'm doing, and I hope I get to do it for longer. I suppose I'm not really,
Okay. Well,
yeah. I
listen,
don't know.
Ronan, thank you so much for your time and insights today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Great to sort of connect with you and learn about your process and your films. As he pointed out, Ronan Kerrigan does have a YouTube channel. Do check out his work on there, and do sort of support his work and stuff. Just wrapping up, you can watch a replay of this on the YouTube channel, John Higgins Film Review. And there were other interviews I've done with the likes of Catherine Mary Stewart from The Last Starfighter and Diane Franklin from Amityville to The Possession. You can also read more of my articles, interviews, and reviews on www.filmandtvnow.com. And last year we launched the film resource website, whatmovie.co.uk. So on that note, thank you very much, Ronan, and thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for watching.
Bye.
Just do that. Okay, so I just gotta just a second. Just stop that.